Hey ladies, thank you for joining me today for the beginning of a brand new series, and it's entitled Fatal Distractions. This week is the first lesson in this series, and we're going to be discussing 6 different areas that we can be distracted, and it can be fatal to our Christian growth. And so today our very first topic is the topic of insecurities. Now, I've prayed for you ladies this week, and I'm so excited to get started with this lesson. And so I'm going to tell you right now to go ahead and turn to Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 to start with. And then after that, we're going to go to some other passages, and I will tell you what those are when we get there. Okay, first of all, I want to talk about distractions in general as a like an introduction to this whole series. Okay, so I am known for many things. A pastor's wife, a daughter, a mother, a musician, a music teacher, but something that I am not known for, and that is an athlete. I am not athletic, and I am just not known for that. I want to tell you about something that happened to me in middle school. Now, my parents put my sister and I both in piano lessons at an early age, and I have taken piano. I started when I was, I think, 8 years old, and it was something that we excelled in, and that was our gift. But I don't know, in middle school, everybody loses their mind, and one year I decided I wanted to play basketball. Now, my dad, he was not into sports and stuff. Our home was, we were into education and fine arts and, things like that. So he said, you don't want to do that. You're just going to end up sitting on the bench. And, he was being truthful. And I just insisted on wanting to play basketball. And I had some friends who were trying out, at school, how they get you all worked up for that. So he gave in and he let me join the basketball team. And I remember practices and stuff, and I didn't really know what was going on because I had not played basketball. I had practiced piano all these years, and the only time I'd played basketball was playing 21 or horse, but I didn't understand the whole game, how it worked. I was trying, and I knew I wasn't very good at it. And I remember one Saturday, I was sitting on the bench during the game, and that was fine with me. And all of a sudden, they called me into the game. I thought, oh no, don't have me play. And I thought, well, I'll be okay. It was towards the end of the game. I don't know what happened. Maybe they didn't have enough players, or there might have been, some rule, or maybe the coach felt sorry for me, but he put me in for some reason. And I thought, if I don't get the ball, we'll be good. And so we're playing, and all of a sudden, I get the ball. I think, great. So I'm dribbling, I'm looking around. My teammates are yelling at me. The people in the stands are yelling things, and the coach is yelling things, and I don't know what they're talking about. And I'm just dribbling. I don't see anybody to pass this to. I think these people are like all around me. And so all of a sudden I look over at the other goal, and there's nobody over there. And I thought, wow, this is wide open. So I take off running to this basketball goal. And we had been shooting in that goal earlier in the game. And so I didn't think anything about it. I go over there and I think, well, nobody's running with me. Nobody's after me. This is great. So I shoot, I make it, and I'm like, yes. Well, the coach comes running out to the court, and he's yelling at me. He tells me to go sit down. And I'm like, what did I do? What's going on? And my teammates are all looking at me in disgust, and they point to the scoreboard, and I had made points for the other team. So there was some rule about halfway through the game that they switched goals. I didn't know that. So I sat down, and I thought, I am so finished with playing ball. Just put me back on the piano bench and get me off the basketball bench. So that just, I was so distracted when I was out there playing ball and stuff. And that's what happens to us as Christians. We may not be in the Word like we should. Maybe we are not really knowledgeable about things that we should be. We get distracted by all the stuff around us, and inevitably we end up embarrassing ourselves, humiliating our family and friends, a bad reflection of God, and then we make points for Satan for the other side when we're distracted and then we're not focused on the things that God has for our life. So the very first distraction, well, I'm not going to tell you what that is yet, because we're going to talk about Hebrews chapter 12, 1 and 2 for just a minute. And it tells us about distractions, and it reads, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God." Okay, so right here we have another comparison to an athlete, and he is to lay aside the weights, and the weights to us are sins that beset us or that get us off track. And so the answer here is to look unto Jesus. And it's not just look at Jesus, look unto Jesus. And this is, to have knowledge of him, to study him, to have a relationship with him. And that is what's going to keep you on track. And if you can keep your focus on him, then it says that you're going to be able to run this race just like those who've gone before us, that they talked about in chapter 11 when they were naming all the great Christians who had gone before, who were a great example of faith. Okay, so now that we've talked about distractions, I wanted to tell you about our very first one we're going to talk about, and I see this distraction in Christian women so much. I've seen it for years. And this is something that I think most ladies have a problem with. And our first topic is insecurities. Now, I think there are a couple of areas of insecurity. And the first area is one that is more of a low self-esteem or self-worth that I think is brought on from, sometimes abuse or things that have been said to you that are untrue, degrading words spoken to you by maybe parents or by a husband. And that can cause insecurity, and that is something that, needs to be dealt with. And that's a whole different side of insecurity that is not the topic today. And that topic is something that you're going to turn to God for finding your worth in the truth. That is all based on, I feel like, a lie that other people have instilled in people's lives, which makes them feel insecure. And that's not the insecurities that I want to talk about today. Today, what I want to talk about is the one that I see more of in general for most ladies. And that one is the insecurity that I like to call self-distraction. Self-distraction. It's an insecurity that you think that everything is about you. Now, I know that sounds harsh, and you're thinking, we've just had lessons on pride. We've talked about that. But this is a different look at pride. It is really something that sometimes we think is being modest, or we think it's acceptable, or we think it's okay, when actually it's not. And when we have insecurities that I'm going to talk about today, it's really self-inflicted, and it is caused by actually thinking more of yourself than you think of other people and of God. And I know some of you are probably thinking, I don't have a problem with that. But I want to talk to you today about it, and you might see that it's more of a problem than that we may think it is. I could use this phrase. I could say, it's not about you. And we could say it two different ways. We could say, it's not about you, as in, being, reprimanding and saying, getting onto somebody. It's not all about you. We'll say it to our kids sometimes, or somebody that we're getting frustrated with. Or I could say it in another way that's more of a freeing way. It's a way of relief. It's saying it's not all about you, which actually should bring about in your heart and your life a sense of really relief, thinking, praise the Lord, everything is not all about me. And that takes a lot of pressure off of us when we look at life that way in our insecurities. We're going to look at a person in the Bible that had a lot of insecurities that he had to deal with. And God called him to a great purpose. And we're going to look at his conversation between him and God. And this may be a conversation that you've actually had with God. Maybe not these words, but this same sense of conversation. We're going to look at Exodus chapter 3, verses 10 to 15 to start with. And we're going to be talking about Moses today. Now, I'm going to jump in the middle of the story. Moses is standing at the burning bush, and this is a bush that was being consumed by fire, it actually was burning, but it was not being consumed. It was not being destroyed. It was just burning, and it was a, miracle of God. And actually, this was a huge honor that God has came to Moses and is talking to him, and he's told him to take his shoes off. He's on holy ground. So we're going to start with verse 10, and let's see what happens here between Moses and God. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. Now, this was a meeting between God and Moses, and God is telling Moses what he wants him to do. And he's chosen Moses because God knows Moses is qualified for the assignment. Moses is strong. He is courageous. He has been training in the wilderness for some time now. He grew up in Pharaoh's home, so he's well educated. And Moses is the man for the job, and so God has picked him out for this time. In verse 11, and Moses says unto God, who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? So some commentators say Moses is showing humility. Some say, he's scared. He's insecure. And there's probably a combination of both of them. But Moses has lost confidence in himself, probably from the incident that occurred when he killed the Egyptian. He probably thinks, God can't use me now. And he's questioning God's judgment about choosing him. And so Moses is turning this whole situation into what about him, about Moses. And actually, who Moses is irrelevant. What is important about this whole situation here is who God is and what God is going to do. Moses is just to be a vessel. It's not about Moses. So God gives him the plan, and Moses turns it around to something about himself. And so let's look at verse 12. And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. And Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? Well, God gives grace to the lowly. Here, Moses probably is thinking the people are going to think I'm a nobody. They don't know me, or if they do, they know what he has did. And perhaps he is trying to be modest, and modesty is a good quality. However, it looks more like he's being insecure, and he's focused on himself again. Moses wants to know what is he going to say? What am I going to say? And he's not trusting God in this situation so far. So God answers him in verse 14. And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. And God said moreover unto Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, the Lord God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob hath sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. So God's reply to Moses is clear. He says, I am is who sent you. And God is reminding Moses of who he is. He's taken the focus off of Moses and he's putting it on himself. And that is one of the answers to insecurity, to correcting it, is to take the focus off of yourself and what you are not and putting it on God and who he is. And God also reminds him, he says, this is my name forever. God has been here forever. He was the father, he was reminding him, I'm the father of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. And, I'm the God of all of them. And he is, showing Moses in proportion. Moses is really small in this scheme of things, and God is who this is all about. And so when we look at, reality, our purpose on earth is to give glory to God. So let's keep going in Exodus 4 and verse 1. And Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. Okay, so again, we have references. Moses is referring to himself. He says they won't believe him. He says they will not listen to my words. And, they're not going to believe me, that you would appear to me. So Moses here now is worried about other people. And let me just say, that's where a lot of our insecurities, we fall into this trap and we're distracted because we're so worried about what people think about us. Now, I'm not talking about what people think of you as in if you have a good testimony or not, or if you try to do right, or if you're trying to please God. I'm talking about you're so worried about what people think about you that really what you're doing is you're really just thinking about yourself. It's a people-pleasing kind of thing. And it's a funny thing because people-pleasing sounds like it's others-focused when actually it's not. It is a selfish focus when all you're doing is thinking about pleasing other people. Because usually people pleasers are wanting something back. They're wanting something nice said to them. In return, they're wanting them to think well of them. They're wanting to look good in front of them. So people pleasers are actually self-distracted because that is where they're getting their confidence from, is from the well-being of others or how they think about them. So at the end of the day, pleasing people is really not serving them. It can be serving yourself. That's what it boils down to. If that is what you're getting out of trying to do for others, that's different doing for others, helping others, than constantly doing because you want to please them in order to make you feel good. Now, Moses is also trying to manage his image. I've never thought about it like that, and I read that this week, that in social media, that's what we do a lot of times. We're trying to manage our image. We're actually trying to manage how people perceive us. And when we do that, we are very into ourself. And that also becomes a problem with family. When you are trying to make your husband, your children, or anything that has to do with you be a reflection of yourself, that's another example of being self-distracted. If you're so concerned that that you're embarrassed, maybe you're a teenager or a young person, you're embarrassed by what your parents say to you, or when you're a little kid, you would never think that. But when you get older, you think, I can't believe my mom said that or my dad said that. I'm so embarrassed. It's because it's all about you. It's a reflection on you. you're not concerned about them. You're concerned about yourself. And that is the same, it goes the same for our spouse and for our children. When your children, if they have some kind of shortcoming or some kind of failure, they're not as good at something as you think they should be, and you're embarrassed of it, it's really a self-serving kind of attitude. When you're more concerned about how you look instead of helping your child or being there for your husband, then that's a real problem. Now, we're going to go on to I'm going to sum up some things here that God talks to Moses about next. God is trying to give Moses even more evidence of his power. He tells him to pick up his rod, and it turns into a snake. And then he picks up the snake, and it turns back to a rod. He tells him to put his hand in his bosom, and he pulls it out, and it turns to leprosy. And he puts it back in, and it goes away. And God says, I'm going to give you all these signs, and the people are going to see these things, and they're going to believe in me, Moses. It's not your power. It's going to be me working through you. And so God gives us a lesson right here of how to get our eyes off of insecurity. We need to focus on who He is and His power and turn our self-focus into a God focus. Now, God was to be the one who was glorified in this whole adventure, and it was not going to be Moses. God gives us the ability. He gives us the knowledge. He can give you the right setting. He can give you the right place. He can give you all of that. But until you are willing to obey, you're always going to find an excuse of why you're not good enough or you think somebody else should do the job. And we're going to see that's what Moses ends up telling God. Let's look at verse 10. And Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue. And the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth, or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? And so Moses is pointing out his insecurities to God. He is probably exaggerating some issues he may have. He is looking at or telling God, that he has these problems. And whenever we start really self-focusing and being, totally distracted with ourselves, we will take this, the smallest things that we think is a flaw in our life, and we will make a big deal out of it, and we will blow it all out of proportion, and it becomes actually a broken vision of yourself. Insecurities always magnify flaws because you are constantly aware of them. Most people are not, and when you're self-distracted, you focus on them and you bring them up. And we should never apologize for how God has made us. Women compare themselves with others so many times, and that makes them insecure. God made you the way that He wanted to. He created you. Yes, you are unique and you are special. And there should be no apology for how God made you. God created you for a purpose, and He has one for you. That's why it's so important to know what your spiritual gift is, what your talents are, so you can use them for the Lord. Look at verse 12. Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, O my Lord, send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is not Aaron the Levite thy brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he cometh forth to meet thee, and when he seeth thee, he will be glad in his heart. Letting go of insecurities is a hard thing. I understand that. And it takes really being intentional and really aware of what you're doing when you are becoming self-distracted to stop doing that. And at this point, really, God is fed up with Moses. He says the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. If God wanted Aaron to do the job, God would have went to Aaron. Even though Moses is thinking, Aaron would be better at this, or anybody would be better at this. I don't know if Moses was thinking Aaron would, but you know how many times we did that? We've said, oh, let her do that. She would be better at it. If, you know, somebody comes to you and asks you to do something, or you try to think of somebody else that you feel like is better at something than you, and you're thinking, oh, go get them. You know, I've done that before in my life. I'll say, oh, so-and-so could probably, you know, play this better than me, and go ask them to do it. Or, you know, somebody might, I would say, oh, they would sing that much better than I would. If, you know, if somebody has asked me to sing something. And how many times do we do that? Because of our insecurities, which is actually a selfish thing. It's thinking of yourself rather than doing something that would glorify God, and it should glorify God with our talents. Verse 15, and thou shalt speak unto him, and put words in his mouth, and I will be with thy mouth, and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. And he shall be thy spokesman unto the people, and he shall be, even he shall be to thee instead of a mouth, and thou shalt be to him instead of God. Okay, God keeps using these words instead in here, which kind of makes me think, you know, God's having to use second string, because Aaron was not the first choice for this job. And many times we'll say, you know, I'll do it if nobody else will. But God-centered callings always lead us to Him. It should glorify His suffering, His sacrifice, and His life. And, you know, Moses was really thinking more about himself instead of glorifying God in this situation. He was so insecure and nervous about himself. But God ends up, you know, working this out. And I want to look at this last verse, and this is in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Okay, so the phrase spirit of fear here is referring to a state of mind that lacks courage and moral strength. And it even says, God hath not given. That means fear is not from God. He doesn't give that. What does God give? We see the word but, which is turning the whole, you know, thing around. It's doing a 360 here. It says, but this is what God gives, is what it's saying. What does God give? Power, love, and a sound mind. That means, you know, fear is not from God. And in this verse here, you know, He reprimanded the disciples for being fearful in a storm and a lack of having faith. But these three things that God does give, this is the antidote to insecurities. You know, I wish I could just give you a shot in the arm of these three things, you know, power, love, and sound mind. You know, when we have these three things, then we will be secure in the Lord. And that's where our security should come from. When we are focused on our insecurities, we really are disobeying God with our life. And we're letting, you know, these things spiritually bring us down. It's distracting us. These insecurities are. You know, so how can we apply all this lesson to our life? I want you to think about, you know, your insecurities can be used as a way to help other people. I'm thinking, you know, for instance, I struggle with being shy. I'm an introvert. It's something I've always struggled with my whole life. And I use that insecurity actually to talk to other people and get to know them, because I'm a good listener. Since I'm not the one who wants to do all the talking, I've learned since a teenager that in order to not feel so awkward or out of place with people I don't know or in a room of people, I'll start asking somebody questions about themselves. And if you notice, people will like to talk about themselves. And so I'll ask questions and let them do the talking. So all I'm doing is listening. Now, I am being a good listener, and I like to listen, and so that works out. So that insecurity right there can be used to be a bridge to other people, to reach out to them. And then when, you know, I'm able to talk to them, they talk to me, and I'm able to be a friend to them. The last thing here, we should never be ashamed of how God created us, because He made us in His image. When we're saying, we want to apologize and say, I'm sorry I'm this way, or I wish I wasn't this way, what we're really saying is, God, you messed up. And God didn't. We are a reflection of Him. And that's what it tells us in the Bible. He made us. He created us in His own image. And we were born and we were created to serve the Lord, to bring Him glory. And so I hope that's what you do with your life. And I hope you think about these things. And remember, God gives you what you need to overcome these insecurities and use them actually as a strength. In conclusion, I want to leave you with this statement. It's not who you are that holds you back. It's who you think you're not. I hope you join me next week for the next fatal distraction that we're going to talk about. Have a great afternoon.